morning everyone. My name is Dr. Kunal Chaudhary, Assistant Professor in Department of Orthopedic. Today I am going to lecture of fracture around shaft of humerus. Okay, so let's start. And so today's lecture contains the introduction of fracture shaft humerus, the history, the epidemiology, the mechanism of injury, the classification, the clinical features of the shaft humerus fracture, the investigation and the treatment and the complication part. Okay, so let's begin with the introduction. What is the shaft fracture humerus? It is a fracture around upper arm, the bone which is in our arm, that is called the humerus, and it comprises 3 to 5% of all fractures. Okay, most of the fracture will heal with appropriate conservative care, although limited number will require surgery for optimal outcome. Okay, the different patient has a different goals, the different activities. So according to the patient's requirement, we choose the treatment, whether we go for conservative or operative. Okay, and that part we later on we discuss whether to operate or conserve. Okay, given the extensive range of motion, the shoulder and elbow. Okay, shoulder joint is movable in a 360 degree. Okay. So it has the maximum range of motion of all the joints in the body. Okay, so the extensive range of motion of the shoulder and the elbow, and the minimal effect from minor shortening, a wide range of radiographic malunion can be accepted with a little functional deficit. Okay, little bit shortening can also be accepted. It is not accepted in femur or a tibia, but in a humerus, a little bit of shortening does not impair the function of the patient. So in that case, we accept. Otherwise, if it is a femur or a tibia, we does not accept shortening because it causes limb length shortening. So it will cause limping. In a humerus fracture, that does not cause that much problem. So we accept that shortening. Okay. In general consideration, current research shows that because of the current research, there is decreasing the surgical failure rate too. Okay, new implants and techniques are also available. So the operative side we prefer much more rather than conservative because of the latest techniques, and it optimizing the post-injury rehabilitation program. In conservative management, we don't go for that much vigorous post-injury rehabilitation. We go slight slowly, but in a operated case, we can go for a very good rehabilitation program from the next day of surgery, and it minimizing the duration and magnitude of remaining disability. The patient can go to work early as compared to the conservative management. Successful treatment demands a knowledge of anatomy, biomechanics, techniques, patient's function and expectation. As I told you, patient's expectations are different in every aspect. Okay, suppose 70-year-older female has a shaft humerus fracture, so she does not have that expectation. She does not need to go to work from the very next day. So in that patient, we can go for a conservative management. While in a 25-year-old laborer or engineer, we don't go for conservative management because he needs to go back to his work because he is earning. Okay, so in that patient, we go for the operative, but that depends on the patient's expectation. Okay, if the patient demands for a conservative management, we can choose that. Okay, it is not that it is contraindicated. Okay, the indication and contraindication we see later on. Let's look at history. Sir John Charnley, okay, it is stated that it is perhaps the easiest of major long bones to treat by the conservative methods. Okay, each and every bone can be managed by the conservative management. Okay, whether it is a radius ulna, whether it is a tibia, whether it is a femur. Okay, all the long bones can be treated conservatively. In the past, each and every fracture were treated conservatively, but as the medicine evolves, they go for the surgery. The implants are evolving, and the surgical post-op rehabilitation are evolving. So we later on move to the operative part. Okay, but in the ages, we all the people are doing conservative management. So in that case, humerus, the Sir John Charles stated that it is the easiest of major long bones to treat conservative methods. Okay, others, what's the problem with others? In others, there is angulation, there is shortening, there is case of a non-union. A malunion can also be occur. Malunion is better accepted in a humerus rather than any other long bones. What is the epidemiology? How the fracture occurs? In a young male, high energy trauma is required to cause the fracture of shaft humerus. Okay, it doesn't cause by the trivial trauma. Trivial trauma can cause shaft humerus fracture in the elderly patients. Okay, the low energy trauma, like a fall in a bathroom, fall in a home. The trivial trauma, just a slight fall, because they were osteoporosis, so slight trauma can cause the fracture. While in young patient, the motor vehicle injury like this, high energy velocity trauma is required to cause the fracture. What is the anatomy of the humerus? Okay, so humerus is proximally, the humerus is roughly cylindrical. Okay, in proximal part. Okay, tapering to a triangular shape distally. When it goes distally, it has a triangular shape. The medullary canal of humerus tapers to an end above the supracondylar expansion. At the supracondylar region, the medullary canal ends. Okay, the humerus is well enveloped in a muscle and soft tissue. Hence, there is a good prognosis for healing in the majority of uncomplicated fractures. It is surrounded by the muscles all around the humerus, so it has a more vascular supply, okay, as compared to the other bones. So it has a very good healing potential as compared to the other bones. The nutrient artery, it enters the bone very constantly at the junction of the middle one-third and the lower one-third foramina. Okay, in the small area of the distal half of medial one-third on a medial side. Okay, all the nerves are radial, median, and ulnar nerve surrounds the humerus. The radial nerve, it does not travel along the spiral groove, and it lies close to the inferior lip of the spiral groove, but not in it. Okay, you have spiral grooves. It does not contain it, but it lies near to the spiral groove. Okay, it is only for a short distance near the lateral supracondylar ridge that the nerve is in direct contact with the humerus, and it pierces the lateral from the posterior to the lateral intramuscular septum. From proximally, it lies in the posterior compartment. In the lower compartment, it pierces the lateral intramuscular septum and it comes anteriorly. So this is the humerus. The neurovascular structure which lies close to the humerus, the ulnar nerve, median nerve, and the radial nerve. Okay, the brachial artery lies medial to the humerus. The mechanism of injury. Direct trauma is the most common, especially motor vehicle accident. Okay, as I told you earlier, the high energy velocity is required to cause the shaft fracture humerus. Indirect trauma, such as a fall on an outstretched hand, it can also be caused in a fall on an outstretched hand. It causes the spiral oblique fracture. The fracture pattern depends on the stress applied. The compressive causes proximal or distal humerus fracture. The bending causes transverse fracture of the shaft. The torsional force causes the spiral fracture of the shaft. Torsional and bending causes oblique fracture, usually associated with the butterfly fragment. Okay. What is the clinical features? History, mode of injury, velocity of injury. In a history, we go for the mode of injury, velocity of injury. The patient, the personal history like alcoholic abuse, drugs, because they are prone for repeated injuries. Age and sex of the patient, as I told you, osteoporosis we need to look for. So it is more common in an elderly female. The comorbid condition, the previous treatment, previous bone pathology, whether it is a pathological fracture or not. What are the clinical features? It causes pain, deformity, bruising, crepitus, abnormal mobility, swelling, or any neurovascular injury can be there. You have to look for the radial nerve palsy because it is most commonly associated with the fracture shaft humerus, because the radial nerve lies close to the fracture shaft humerus at the junction of the middle one third and the lower one third. So when the fracture occurs at that level, the shaft goes distally, and it can damage the radial nerve because it lies close to that. Okay, it is also called as a Lowenstein-Levis fracture. Okay. We look for the skin integrity, examine the shoulder joint and elbow joints, forearm, hand, and clavicle for associated trauma. When it is a high velocity injury, there is more chances of the associated injuries can also be there. Check the function of the median, ulnar, and particularly the radial nerve. Okay, look for the wrist drop, whether it is present or not. You have to mention that. Assess for the presence of the radial pulse because it can sometimes damage. So after the history and clinical examination, we go for the investigation. We go for the X-rays, CT scan, MRI, nerve conduction study, routine investigation like CBC, RBS, urea create. Okay. In radiograph, we go for the X-ray. In CT scan, when it involves a joint, we normally don't go for the CT scan in a routine fracture shaft humerus, but if it involves joints or that is we have more comminuted, we go for the CT scan. When it is a pathological fracture, we can go for the MRI. Now conduction study, if there is associated nerve injury in our examination, so we have to go for the nerve conduction study and the routine investigation for the patient status. X-rays, AP and lateral views of the humerus, including the joints above and below the fracture. So the shoulder joint and the elbow joint should be included in your X-ray. If you don't include, you might miss the fracture around shoulder and elbow. CT scan of associated intra-articular injury, proximally or distally. CT scanning may also be indicated in the rare situation where a significant rotational abnormality exists, as a rotational alignment is difficult to judge from plain radiographs of a diaphyseal long bone fracture. MRI for pathological fracture. Now we go for the classification. Closed, whether it is closed one, whether it is an open one, according to the location, whether it is proximal, whether it is medial, whether it is distal, the fracture pattern, whether it is transverse, whether it is oblique, whether it is spiral, whether it is comminuted segmental. The soft tissue status, the soft tissue injury, we classify for the Gustillo and Anderson classification. Associated injuries, the radial nerve injury, as I told you, wrist drop can be there. Neuropraxia at time of injury will often resolve spontaneously. Nerve palsy after manipulation of splinting is due to nerve entrapment and must be immediately explored by orthopedic surgery. Ulnar and median nerve injuries, brachial artery injuries. So the diagnosis by history, clinical examination, and imaging. Okay. After diagnosis, we go for the treatment. The goal of treatment is to establish union with acceptable alignment. Okay. Union, we need a union also, and acceptable alignment. We does not want more interrotation or extra rotation. Okay, because excessive rotation can cause functional impairment. Okay, slight rotation can be easily accepted. So what are the treatment options we have? We have a non-operative, conservative management, and the other is operative management. So we go on and after what is good for the patient. Normally we explain the patient both the management. So most of the time the surgeon wants patient to choose the treatment because each treatment has its own pearls and pitfalls. Okay, it has its indication and contraindication, so we have to look for that. So the non-operative conservative management. So what we do in that? What is the indication of the conservative management? The undisplaced closed simple fractures. Undisplaced closed simple fracture. The displaced closed fracture with less than 20 degree anterior angulation. It is my humerus. So if you go by the side, this is angulation. Okay. So the less than 20 degree angulation. 30 degree varus valgus angulation. Varus valgus, if you look from the front, the inside is varus. It is varus, it is valgus. So less than 30 degree varus angulation is accepted. The spiral fractures and the short oblique fractures, we can go for. More than 90% of humeral shaft fractures heal with a non-surgical management. Okay, it is the first line of treatment written in the books. conservative management for humerus shaft fracture. Okay, it is written in the books, and from the ages it is practiced. As I told you, 20-degree anterior angulation, 30-degree of varus angulation, and up to 3 centimeter of shortening is acceptable. If it is more than 3, then it is not acceptable, but up to 3 centimeter it is some kind of acceptable. The most treatment begins with application of coaptation splint or a hanging arm cast followed by placement of a fracture brace. The splinting, the fractures are splinted with a hanging splint which is from the axilla under the elbow position to the top of the shoulder, the U splint. It starts from the axilla, goes around the elbow, and it covers up to the shoulder. The splinted extremity is supported by a sling. Immobilization by fracture bracing is continued for at least 2 months or until clinical and radiographic evidence of fracture healing is observed. The functional cast brace. It is called the functional cast brace. The cast brace which is functional. The patient can move the arm. Okay. It is one kind of a. Is the new method, a closed method of treating fracture based on the belief that continuing function while a fracture is uniting encourages osteogenesis, promotes the healing of tissues, and prevents the development of a joint stiffness, thus accelerating the rehabilitation program. Not merely a technique, but constitute a positive attitude towards fracture healing. The end-to-end bone contact is not required for a bony union, and that rigid immobilization of the fracture fragment and immobilization of the joints above and below fracture as well as prolonged rest are detrimental to healing. So, the functional cast brace is required. It complements rather than replaces other forms of treatment. Okay. What are the contraindication of the non-operative management? The lack of cooperation by patient. If the patient is not cooperative, we should not go for the conservative management. The bedridden and mentally ill patients, they does not follow advice. They did not follow advice better, so better to go for a surgical management rather than the conservative management. Okay. The deficient sensibility of the limb. When the brace cannot be fitted closely and accurately, the fracture of both bones, forearm when reduction is difficult, and the intra-articular fractures which are not treated conservatively. Okay. And the time to apply, not at the time of injury. Regular cast, time to correct. Regular cast is done. After 1 week we change the cast, and any angular deformity we correct. In compound fracture application to be delayed. Assess the fracture when the pain and swelling is subsided. Minor movements at the fracture site should be pain-free. Any deformity should disappear once deforming forces are removed. Reasonable resistance to the telescoping. These are the functional cast brace given to the patient. These are the humerus brace. And next one is operative management. When do we operate the patient? What are the indication? Fracture in which reduction is unable to achieve or maintain. Fracture with nerve injuries after reduction maneuvers. Open fractures, intra-articular extension injury, neurovascular injury, impending pathological fractures, segmental fractures, and the multiple extremity fractures. We go for the surgical management. What are the options we have? The plating, the nailing, and external fixation. There are so many approaches. One is anterior approach. We go for the anterior approach. The arm is supinate on table. In anterior approach, the incision is proximal landmark is coracoid process. Distal landmark is lateral supracondylar region. Proximally the plane lies between the deltoid and the pectoralis major. Okay. Distally the plane lies between the medial fibers of the brachialis and the lateral fiber of the medial fiber of the brachialis medially and the lateral fiber of brachialis. Okay. The posterior approach. Position of the patient is two positions are there. One is a prone position, one is a lateral position. Okay. The incision. It starts from the tip of olecranon distally to the posterolateral corner of acromion. Okay. Skin and subcute cut. Identify the gap between the lateral and long head of the triceps muscle. proximally develop the interval between the two heads by blunt dissection. Okay, retracting the lateral head laterally and the long head medially. Identify the radial nerve and the accompanying profunda femoris artery. Okay, the plating. Plate osteosynthesis remains the criterion standard of fixation of humerus shaft fracture. The high union rate, low complication rate, and a rapid return to function. Complications are infrequent and include sometimes radial nerve palsy, infection, and a refracture. Else, limited contact compression plate helps prevent longitudinal fracture or fissuring of the humerus because the screw holes in these plates are staggered. I will later on tell you that what are the plates. Okay, this is DCP. It is a dynamic compression plate. Okay, and these are the X-rays of patient treated with the DCP. Okay, this is limited contact DCP. What is the difference between DCP and limited contact DCP? There are fissures in the limited contact DCP. So the plate does not come directly to the bone. There is fissure. So there is a gap lies between the plate and the bone. So it causes less damage to the bone. Okay. These are the locking plates. It has locking screws as well as the simple screw. DCP and LCDCP does not have locking screw. Okay. They have simple screw, while the locking plate has simple as well as the option for a locking screw. Okay. These are the X-rays of a locking plate. Another option is intramedullary nailing. What are the options we have? We have Rush pins, Anders nail, or humerus interlock nail. We can choose from three of them for intramedullary nailing. Okay. It had significant drawbacks such as poor or non-existent axial or rotational stability. With the newer generation of nails came a number of locking mechanisms distally, including interference fits from expandable bolts or ridge pins. Problems with the nails are the insertion site morbidity. Iatrogenic fractures sometimes occur. Okay, non-union can also be reported in nailing. The use of locking nail is restricted to widely separated segmental fractures, pathological fractures, fractures in patients with morbid obesity, and fractures with poor soft tissue over the fracture site, such as the burns. One point emphasized in the most series of large diameter nails is that the humerus does not tolerate distraction. Okay. When we do plating, we go for the compression. But in nailing, there is sometimes distraction can be there. It causes delayed or a non-union. Okay. What are the techniques for nailing? One is the antegrade and other is a retrograde. In antegrade, we insert the humerus nail from the tip of the GT, while in retrograde, it is entered from the supracondylar above the ridge from the posterior aspect. Okay, so two techniques for that: retrograde, antegrade, or a retrograde. Okay, avoid antegrade nailing in patient with pre-existing shoulder pathology or those who will be permanent upper extremity weight bearers like para or quadriplegic. Use a nail lock proximally and distally with screws. Use a mini open technique for distal locking for also. These are the examples. One is from the left side there is Rush nail introduced for fracture shaft humerus, while in the right side there is interlock nail. Interlock nail has advantage of interlock screws proximally and distally, so there is no rotational instability. While in Rush nail or Anders nail, there is some kind of rotational movement is there. Okay. So the pulse and pitfalls of intramedullary nailing: avoid intramedullary nailing in narrow diameter canal. Excessive reaming is not desirable in the humerus. Choose nail length carefully. Insertion site morbidity remains a concern. The other option is external fixation. It is a suboptimal form of fixation with a significant complication rate and has traditionally been used as a temporary method of fracture with contraindication to plate and nail. Like in a compound fracture, we does not go for a plating or nailing. So in that case, for a temporary fixation, we use external fixation for temporary. After 3 to 4 weeks, we change the external fixation to the nailing or plating. Okay, this is the humerus fracture treated with the external fixation. We have a sans pin above the fracture, below the fracture, and the sans pin is connected with the rod. So the temporary stabilization of the fracture is achieved. what is the pitfalls? It is cumbersome for the humerus and its complication rate is high. It is true for the pin, because when we insert the pin, there is pin track infection is always there. So it causes irritation, the infection, and pin breakage can sometimes also occur. Okay. So the complication of the operative management, injury to the radial nerve, non-union rates are higher when fractures are treated with intramedullary nailing, malunion, shoulder pain when fractures are treated with nails, because we introduce from the shoulder joint. So sometimes there is irritation over the shoulder joint can be there. Elbow or shoulder stiffness is there. Post-op rehabilitation is almost important in each and every patient, whether it is treated conservatively, whether it is treated post-surgically. Okay. It allows early shoulder and elbow range of motion. Weight bearing is delayed till fracture is united. Okay. Thank you. Stay safe and wear your mask. Okay. Thank you very much. This is all from my side.